It's embarrassing being a boxing fan right now. You want to know why? Because the UFC has absolutely smashed boxing, pretty much destroyed it. I mean, there's absolutely no competition when you compare the fights the UFC has been currently doing these last 2 months compared to boxing. I mean, ever since the pandemic happened, the virus, you know what I'm talking about. Boxing has been on lockdown. The UFC has also been on lockdown. They've been doing fights without a crowd. But you want to know something? They're still able to pull off these fucking amazing fights. I mean, I want to just show you the quality of fights they've been pulling off since this whole pandemic happened, all right? And we're going back 2 months now. Let's start with this past weekend. You had Kamaru Usman versus Jorge Masvidal. Now, regardless of how I thought that fight played out, that was a quality fight. That was a big deal fight. A lot of people wanted to see Jorge Masvidal fight Kamaru Usman. You also had Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, a rematch that a lot of people wanted to see. A big deal fight. You also had Petr Yan versus Jose Aldo. It turned out to be a really good fight. That was just this weekend. And I'm gonna keep naming names. You had Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer. Amanda Nunes, high quality, the best female MMA fighter in the world. You had the return of Cody Garbrandt. Then let's talk about UFC. This is the first, I believe this was the first UFC that took place during the pandemic. You had Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. That's how you pronounce his last name. Great fight. Entertaining fight. 2 high quality fights. Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. Then you had Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. You had even Francis Ngannou make his return against this guy. I can never pronounce his name, where he destroyed him in 1 round. 1 round. That's all it took. You had Anthony Smith versus Glover. I can never pronounce this guy's last name. You had, what's his name? Can't believe his name right here. Alistair Overeem versus Walt Harris, which was a good fight because Walt Harris was knocking guys out left from right. I forgot to mention, you also had Tyrone Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. Tyrone Woodley, a former long-reigning UFC welterweight champion, versus a top contender at welterweight, Gilbert Burns. You also had, literally like 2 weeks ago, Dustin versus Dan Hooker. One of the most, in my opinion, the most entertaining MMA fight I've seen in my entire life. Now, you compare all those fights compared to what we've got from boxing. You know what fight we got from boxing? Fucking Shakur Stevenson versus Felix Caraballo. In these last 2 months, Shakur Stevenson versus Felix Caraballo, and then you had some, small, low quality fights that have been going on in the UK. That is the only fucking fight that of relevance that we've literally had in boxing. Shakur Stevenson versus a guy named Felix Caraballo. That's it. And all the other fights that were supposedly upcoming, they got pushed back. Deontay Wilder was supposed to fight Tyson Fury, got pushed back. Daniel Dubois was supposed to fight, what's his name? Joe Joyce, got pushed back. And now they're going to have 2 interim fights. Anthony Joshua was supposed to fight Kurab Pulev. That doesn't even have a date yet. Dillian White was supposed to fight Alexander Povetkin. That got pushed back. I don't even know if it has a date yet. How come all these fights got pushed back in boxing, and some of them don't even have an official date yet? Yeah, when it comes to the UFC, they are continuously putting on these shows even during this pandemic. They're doing it with no crowds, but they're still able to pull it off. And these are really entertaining fights. I'm a full-time MMA fan right now. And I'm a casual MMA fan. I'm more of a hardcore boxing fan, but right now I'm really digging MMA. Like, I am seriously digging MMA right now. I'm digging it way more than boxing, because they've been giving me fights that every single weekend. Another fight that I'm looking forward to is Darren Till. They're gonna give me next week. We're gonna have Darren Till versus the guy that that dude just lost to. I forgot his name already, but he is the former champion in the middleweight division. They keep giving us these fights, and that's why right now I am more of a UFC fan. I'm more of an MMA fan right now more than ever, because during this pandemic where you're not having, at the end of the day, I love combat sports. All right, I like seeing people beat each other up. I don't know why. Maybe I'm sick in the head, but I like seeing people beat each other up. I love combat sports. Okay, I love people throwing fists. I love people throwing leg kicks. Whether it's boxing, whether it's MMA, I love combat sports. And right now, the UFC has been delivering. All right, even through this pandemic, I get excited every weekend. I'm not excited for boxing because there's not going to be no boxing matches, because there hasn't been. But I always get hyped up when I see, it's literally every weekend there's another good MMA fight and another good MMA card. But they have just been destroying boxing, man, recently. I'm telling you right now.